I am featured on an amazing summit called the Intrabiz Summit alongside Dr. John D. Martini, Sharon Lecter, Evan Carmichael, Rob Moore, Les Brown, Brian Tracy, 30 of the world's leading industry authorities over a 3-day period, November 25th to November 27th. And it's all going to be about how to rise to thrive going into 2021. So looking forward to seeing that. It's free to join. If you want to pre-purchase some of the audio recordings, use the promo code INTROAS10, INTROAS10, and we'll see you on the Intrabiz Summit. Take care. Bye-bye.
This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by Productivity Authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience podcast with myself, Adam Strong. And today I am with the amazing Andrew Priestley. Now, Andrew, how do I know who Andrew is? Well, Andrew, I've probably known Andrew for probably the best part of around 7 or 8 years. He's from Australia, but living in the UK, which we'll talk about a little bit in a bit. He's a multi-award winning business coach, but also, interestingly enough, talks a lot about leadership and coaches a lot of entrepreneurial based businesses into leadership and mentors a lot of stuff in that. He's he's got 5 books out as well. He's got 5 different books out. I think 2 of them came out this year, which we'll talk about as well. And ranked one of the top 100 UK entrepreneurial mentors as well. He's a chairman of a charity called Clear Sky. It's a children's charity. He's got 21 years of experience. That's hands-on experience in dealing with businesses and stuff like that. Listen, Andrew, I just want to say welcome to the show.
Wow, that's a tough intro to beat, isn't it? That's really good. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah,
it's cool, man. So Interestingly enough, I remember actually 7 or 8 years ago when we first met, and interestingly enough, we met through a course, that your son is part of, and you were one of the mentors and coaches. And I remember when you go in and work with a group of us, and what I love about you is that you just come in with a slightly different angle, I suppose. You really disrupt the mind thoughts and the mind patterns more than anything else. Wouldn't you agree?
I think it's not aiming to be disruptive, but it's aiming to be clear. So, back when you were saying when we met, which is about easily 8 years ago, about 2012, 2011, 2012. Slightly before that, 2007, we had the start of the global financial crisis, right? And it's worth it. It bears saying that I was involved with a couple of banks, major banks, and also government bodies, and I was actually doing something with the Lord Mayor's department at the time for startups, right? And the statistic there was that successful businesses have a business plan, right? And the stats back then were 81% of businesses that start up fail in the first 1 to 3 years, right? And that hasn't changed. No. Right? It's still the same. This is what blows me away, right? And then they also came out with this research. Banks said, well, you'll love the numbers on this, right? 54% of those who have a business plan fail, right? So we were looking at these numbers, and I was hanging around with a couple of VCs at the time, and over about a 2-year period, we were putting together this course, if you like an incubator for startups. And the question we're asking is, if having a business plan works, then why do so many businesses with a business plan fail, right? And if you've watched something like Dragon's Den, for example, the person will come into the Dragon's Den and they'll say, this is my business, and I'll try and pitch it. And the entertainment is, do they walk away with the money or not? But when I first saw that show, I thought, it's not that impressive, because they're just asking executive summary questions, which are out of a business plan, right? And I've been looking at hundreds of business plans, and same with VCs. And when I look at a business plan, I go almost like really quickly, no. And we started kicking this conversation around, what is it we're looking for when we look at a business plan, right? And it came down to this: we're stress testing the assumptions in the business case, right? And the reason why so many businesses fail is because they've got a good idea for a business, right? But they haven't got a good business for the idea, right? So with that in mind, in 2009, I started writing a book called Starting, and it says, you might have a good idea for a business, but have you got a good business for the idea? And we identified 8 questions that VCs ask all the time. And my question to business owners is, you're an investor in your business, right? So shouldn't you be asking the same questions? So it started life, I know this is a long answer to a very short question, but it started life as a program called Success in 80 Days. And we felt it took 80 to 90 days to stress test all the assumptions in a business.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an amazing tool, and no one bought it.
Why?
when you've got this amazing tool, but nobody buys it, right?
Right.
And Dan was saying, oh, it's not marketed correctly and all this sort of stuff. But it came down to this, I even did expressions of interest marketing, and that was really strong, right? And it was priced well for a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wanted to spend 90 days on it. And there's this thing, as it was then, as it is now, they rush into it, right? So somebody said to me, can we do it in 90 minutes? And I said, that's a challenge. So the workshop that I put together in this can be done in 90 minutes if you want to. I put every single question that I would ask, there's nothing held back, right, in this book. So in 90 minutes, if you just follow it and work through question by question, and there's 8 big questions that VCs ask, and underpinning all of that is, do I get it? Do I get this? So do I get the idea of the business? Do I get who this is for? Who this target client is? Do I get what team you need? Do I get how you're going to go to market with this? Do I get what you're selling and what the price points are? Do the numbers make sense? Do I get the business model, and do I get the systems? But importantly, do I get why you're doing it? So out of that, I then went off into doing business strategies and the 90-minute business strategy. And it is what it is. It just gives you a standalone experience of, okay, now I get my business. I get strategically what's happening in the business.
Yeah.
And I've stress tested, and I've got a structure and a method for stress testing the assumptions that underpin it. Now, there's a lot of assumptions, but I've picked out the 8 or 9 really. One of the assumptions is you're starting the business for the right reason.
Yeah.
Right.
And we'll come back to that, because I've got a really fascinating question around stress testing.
Sure.
But I know that you grew up in Brisbane, and you started off in teaching. That was where you started off. But I guess my first major question really is, how did you transition from teaching into entrepreneurship? Because it's they're very two massive different industries, I guess, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And look, when somebody starts a business, entrepreneurs really are doing one of 3 things. You're looking for a gap in the market, you're looking for an emerging trend, or you're looking for an emerging industry, right?
Right.
But what underpins that, what gets missed out in that equation, is usually you're transferring skills, knowledge, qualifications, or experiences that you've already had into something different. So teaching has a subset of skills and a way of thinking that transferred wonderfully across to business, right? Or so I thought. So when I was at uni, when I did my degree, my teaching degree, I did it in reading psychology, and I got involved with a student newspaper. Actually started it, and ink got in my veins, and away we went. And I was surfing, and I was playing in a band, and I started a surfing newspaper, and I started a music paper. And I taught for 10 years, racked up long service, and I thought, I'm going to take 3 months off. I'm going to do this entertainment newspaper full on. And I was actually in competition with Rupert Murdoch.
Okay. Was this a paid thing, or was this
that, right?
Was it free, or was it paid?
Well, I started a business. No, well, it was a free paper, but it was advertising, funded by advertising revenues, right?
Okay.
And it was the hospitality industry, right? And Rupert Murdoch had the Courier Mail, and he had a lifestyle, almost like a rock and roll newspaper type thing, right? But mine was a lifestyle paper, right? And so basically I transferred that experience of working on the newspaper at university and then putting out a surfing newspaper and that. So I was doing that as a side hustle while I was teaching. And when I went on long service, I said, I'm going to go full time. Stupidly, I resigned because that business nearly killed me.
Did it?
This is why it's really important to, why did you start the business? Why are you starting this business? Because I thought, it's going to deliver all these things. The irony is it was a lifestyle newspaper, and I was working 12 to 14-hour days, 7 days a week. And it was a lifestyle newspaper that didn't give me a lifestyle. So I sort of had this moment where I came to this crossroads. It was making a ton of money, by the way, right? But I had no lifestyle. So it was that crossroad moment of money and values, right? So again, nothing's wasted. I actually shut that business down in the end because it was just, it just exhausted me, right? And then I said, okay, what have I learned from that? What was the gift of that business? And nothing's wasted because I've taken all of that knowledge into other things,
Great.
That's how I did it.
It's a good one. And I like that. I love a good old story anyway. But I know that, you emigrated from Australia to the UK. And I also know between your daughter and your son, who are entrepreneurs in their own right, they built great businesses. And do you feel that, I know that when you did immigrate to the UK, for example, who was it that kind of facilitated the move? Was it you? Was it Dan? Was it Justin? Who was it? I had to ask that question.
Well, they're unconnected for a start off, right?
Okay.
Because Dan had, again, business context. I mean, Dan's remarkable because I think at 21, his business was almost doing about 10 mil, right? And Australia as a marketplace was just too small. Right. And a friend of his said, why don't you come to London? Because you've got all of Australia's marketplace and some in one town. And people say, oh, it's really tough out there. If you are in London, there's more than enough business in London or Manchester or Liverpool or Birmingham to keep you going a lifetime. Right. So don't tell me there's no business there. Right. There is. It's just a ton of business. Right. There's a lot of money. People say, oh, there's no money. No, there's lots of money. Right. So he came over and about 2006, right? And then I took a sabbatical in 2008, and Justine had come over as well because, all Aussies want to leave the prison and come back to, the old dart and see what life's like here, We escape the island, I'm on an island, get me off, off the island.
From one island to another.
Yeah. But I mean, we've grown up with a legacy of you've got to go to England. England's a mother country. That's where you've got to go. So Justina came there, and then I came over on a sabbatical, and I've got a British passport, so citizenship wasn't a problem. And I loved it here. I absolutely loved everything about it. I mean, the UK is an amazing place, and going into Brexit, I just want to urge you, that there have been bigger and tougher things that have tried to break the Brits than Brexit. Okay, you got to go back to the history of this country. It's a real can-do country, believe it or not. But the only thing is, Brits wait until it gets right up to the knife edge before they say, "Now let's go into a few jars about this, and then we'll do something." But
it's a bit like playing cat and mouse, really, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. But the Brits have got a fighting spirit, which is amazing. It's a great pedigree. The fighting spirit of the Brits is incredible.
Well, I hope some of our listeners that are listening in from Asia and Australasia and stuff like that, I hope kind of you might think of us Brits as kind of potential joint venture collaborators.
Oh, without a doubt.
Partners, so that's all good.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's a great shout, actually.
Yeah. In terms of, because I know that you do a lot of stuff in the leadership realm and you've got a wealth of experience in that. What do you think, especially in times like this, but where do you think a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs go wrong when it comes to leadership?
God, that is a huge, no pressure.
I'll put you on the spot. I mean, it's like kind of Larry King, but we just have fun and have conversations, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'll give it to you again, context. When I left teaching, I started this paper, right? And the paper, I had this crossroads moment where I shut it down, right? And what I did was I started a family-friendly business. So it meant I could take my kids to school, I could pick them up, I could go and play sport with them, I could go and do canteen duty, I could take them on holidays and not second guess what I should be doing, right? So I started this agency. And again, I'm building on a skill set of reading psychology, went into copywriting. And so I started as an ad agency. What came out of that was a marketing business. So there's no point doing an ad if you don't know what the marketing strategy is, right? And then out of that, what's the point of the marketing if you don't know the business strategy? So that sort of a growth, if you like, I was pivoting through those gear changes, if you like. So pivot is you take a skill you've got, but you take it off in a new direction. So it went from publishing to advertising to a marketing agency to a strategic business.
Yeah.
And then people were saying, we won all these awards, and people were saying, how do you do this? How did you do this, right? And a mate of mine said, I think you'd make a good business coach. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, it's what you do right now, except you get paid for it. But what came out of that was I started working with, and I'll talk English money, 70% of businesses in the UK have revenues less than 300,000. 20% of UK businesses have revenues between 300,000 and 2 mil. And in terms of employment, under 300,000, you're employing somewhere between 1.7 and 2.4 staff members. So it's yourself and maybe a part-timer.
Right.
But when you get to about 300,000, you employ somewhere between 3 to 20 employees, right? So the revenue per person is like 100 grand. So it's a good metric for most businesses, right? If your revenues are greater than 300,000, right, you're looking at about 100 grand revenue per person. So I'm working with a law firm that does 1.2 million turnover, 12 staff, great business. And I'm working with an accounting firm that has 11 staff and does 300,000 turnover. See, it's not even, their revenue per person is not even close actually to the living wage in the UK, which is 30.4 thousand, right?
Yeah.
So the leadership question, let's come back to that. There's two parts to this. So there's a point when you're running a business where you've got the bandwidth for running a business and doing the operational up to about 6 employees. And it's up to 6, you can do your own work and you can supervise what your team are doing, right?
Agreed.
When you get about the 7th person, there's a mindset shift, and it really, really amplifies around the 12th person, right? As soon as you employ the 13th person, as Dan likes to say, Jesus, when the Jesus Inc. was great at 12, as soon as they put the 13th guy on, it went all pear-shaped, right? Look what happened, right? But there's something mentally, it's not money, it's an emotional thing that happens around about the 6th or 7th employee, because where you could all muck in, as a business owner, you can't do that over about 7. You don't have the mental bandwidth for it, right? So there's this gear change from managing and doing operational stuff, where you then have to become more strategic, right? Which means you've got to step back. Now, a lot of people don't want to step back from doing something they love doing, right? And they're frightened to do that. So a lot of people have that problem around probably about the 6, 7 employee bit. At that point, that's when they start asking me to get involved, and they start reading leadership books. And firstly, they read a lot of management books, then they start looking at leadership books, because the gear changes from operational thinking to strategic thinking. So where they go wrong, firstly, is they hang on to the operational far too long.
Okay.
Right. Now, a big thing is, there's 4 things that underpin any business, and that is sales and marketing, or marketing and sales, sorry, your management admin, your operations, and your financial control. And as a business coach, I look at what's going on in those 4 key aspects of the business, right?
Sure.
And particularly around HR is part of the management admin, and things like your logistics and IT is part of operations and that. But a big part of operations is systemizing. So again, a lot of leaders don't have anything systemized. If they've got recurring linear business systems, none of that's documented. So they've got to hold it in their head. So a lot of leaders don't have the bandwidth to lead, because they haven't thought, well, to grow this, I've got to systemize it. And Dan talks about, out of your systems come your assets. And then you really can scale. You can then grow it, and you can pivot and grow and scale, and you go in divisions, things like that. It really comes in when you get to about 12 employees. That's when leadership really kicks off. You can afford a coach, and there's a lot of coaches out there who don't understand what I'm telling you right now, right? They don't get this, and they've never run a business. They've never employed people. They've read a lot of books, but they haven't actually had to come up with 35 grand a month payroll, for example, right? So there's all of those issues around it. But for me, that's the first part. It's that gear change from operational to strategic, and it's a reluctance to let go of the operations and do what's required strategically, which is to create systems, right? So I'll give you 2 points here. It's a big answer, but most leaders, if you're in a leadership role, there's really 5 things I'm looking at when I'm coaching executives, when I'm coaching leaders. Number 1, if you're the CEO, and you mentioned CEOs, the remit for a CEO is, number 1, strategic direction. We know where we're going, right? The operational stuff is a different thing, but I am telling you where we're going with this, strategic direction. That's the first one. Second one is business performance. So they've got to know the metrics. They've got to know, what does good look like and how do we measure that, right? So the third one is operational excellence. So if you want to grow anything, you've got to be able to demonstrate operational excellence. The fourth one is a high-performing team. And the last one is impeccable communication. And so when I'm coaching CEOs, I'm coaching across those 5 dynamics, because they're really pragmatic and they're very practical. And I can go hunting in each of those 5 areas for where we need to pick up skill, or we need to change behaviors, or we might need to change their beliefs, or we might have to have an identity change. So I've gone from being an operational manager to a leader. So if I say, are you a leader? Yeah, how many staff you got? I've got a client who has 53 staff. Are you a leader? Oh, no. So the identity of a leader is not there, right? So sometimes I've got to change the identity. And something that really changes, is a real gear change for any business, is probably the last area where we change the intention of the business. So a big aspect of my business is a charitable function to it. It's a contribution arm to the business, right? So if you're doing good, if you do well, do good. You know, so businesses that have that higher intention, that, you know, that why, that, you know, that shapes their identity of the business and the leaders. It shapes their beliefs. What do we believe we can and can't do? It informs and shapes the skills that they should adopt, which then informs and shapes the behaviors, and then that influences what shows up.
Very cool.
Yeah, you might have to watch this back a few times and make notes.
I mean, I was literally
as much value as I can, you know.
I was literally just making notes, because what I do is when we have fun and have conversations, I become a student, you know, and the same with everyone that is listening in right now. If you don't have a pen and a paper handy, guys, you need to make sure you pause this right now and take notes, because what you get from this podcast is not like any other podcast. It's completely unique. We bring people like Andrew, who's the elite of the elite. So anyway, moving on to
it's like you, mate. You know where to look.
Yeah.
You'll have a formula for what works. When you work with someone, I'm sure you've got a format that you follow that based on your knowledge and experience. All my stuff is based on the fact that I lost 2 businesses. And one I shut down, right? So I've learned a lot from that. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we all have our own different journeys and our different stories and what we learn from that, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting question, actually. But, you know, working in the times that we are right now, which is people are working more in what I call the digital world right now, you know, because people are working from home or whatever it might be. What do you think that people need to do, entrepreneurs and business owners, what do you think they need to do right now in terms of focal point or focus to create more of a successful digital business compared to what we did kind of 220?
You know, again, these are great questions, but it's like you're opening a tin of worms. But I mean,
that's true.
For me, you've got shiny object syndrome, which is, I'll go this, right? For me, I just use LinkedIn. That's it, right? That's all I use. And I'm really bad at it, but I get a lot of business through LinkedIn, right? Because it's not the tool, it's the way I show up on LinkedIn.
Right.
I have a friend of mine who, she's a hairdresser, and she's built a business that does 1.2 million turnover for a hairdressing salon in one of the most depressed parts of the UK. Wow. And people say, how did you do that? She says, I just use Instagram to find my local target client. So it's not like she's using a lot of tools. Obviously, the customer experience in the salon is impeccable, right? So they based it around an avatar, a target client, and what that client would expect. But the sourcing of those clients, you know, is a digital thing. It's an Instagram thing. It's driven by Instagram, mate. Nothing else but that.
Sure.
Right? I think to say, oh, we're in a digital thing at the moment. No, we're in a digital thing, full stop, right? Well, that's where it's going. Think of it like this: between 2009 and 2019, and I wish I had come up with this results, but this is what I'm told. Between 2009 and 2019, we had a 15% growth in e-commerce across those 10 years, right? In quarter one of this year, we've had a 15% increase in 3 months, right? So most people are going through this thing. Do I even need to be in a geographical place anymore? Let's just do everything online, right?
Yeah.
I would say this though, and I'd make this a big point. Again, I'm a scientist, Adam. I mean, you know, I did a psych degree, and they didn't give it away, right? And so, you know, and I love doing the psych degree, and it was a heavy science thing. So you look at things like critical thinking, and a big part of it is context and pedigree. Where does stuff come from? And think of it like this. The world changed in 2004. And you know what happened in 2004, don't you?
2004. 2004. That was 2008 financial crisis. Well, we kind of changed into the new transition, didn't we?
This world certainly changed in 2004.
Then we go from, it wasn't in industrial age. We went into more of the, trying to think. No, remind me. Come on.
I'll make it easy for you. Facebook,
of course.
Right. That's when Zuckerberg launched Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And if you take it from 1904 to 2004, the way of doing business was very transactional. In 2004, Zuckerberg made it relational. So words like know, like, trust came in, right? You couldn't join Facebook in the original format unless you're in that alumni. You had to be invited in by someone who knew you. So it made it very relational. And big trends like that take about 20 years before we understand what that meant. So we still haven't done 20-year cycle with Facebook yet, right? Facebook is shooting itself in the foot. They've lost the plot a little bit because it's more like a shopping channel now, right? Most social media, to me, from my perspective, having come through newspapers, is we've just transferred what we were doing in magazines and print and radio and TV across to digital. And it's everything is now, if I said you got to sit there and watch the shopping channel, and you go crazy. And yet that's what most of it is, right? Yeah. But the stuff that works, personal narrative started to take off. And things like, even though Joseph Campbell did The Hero's Journey in the 1980s, right? The relevance of that 20 years suddenly made sense in 2004 because it's about a relationship, it's about collaboration, and it's about, who are you when you show up, things like that. Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, now makes a lot more sense because I want to know who you are, right? Yeah. So with 2004 became very, very relational, right? It's learning those relational tools. Social selling is like having a foot in each camp. I want to be transactional and I want to relate. Well, we're moving into this relational thing, right? Over COVID, however you're showing up online being digital, right, gets amplified. So if you're an idiot, that's because people are focusing on this thing so much, that's going to get, and you and I both know people in this town, right, who have not done the gear change and they're still showing up like they would do as if they were on stage selling to an auditorium, and it comes across as, it's like 5 on the creepy scale. You know what I mean? It's like, so we're wanting, so you can get away with things like this now, and whereas we all had to have suits, people have gone more relaxed, right? But it's in keeping with who are you relationally. Now, if we take that across to brand, what do we stand for? What are the values that we stand for? How do we communicate those things? Mm-hmm. And so we tend to want to do business with people who are delivering value, for example, in your case, right? Where you go, shoot, Adam's a great source. He has amazing guests.
Thank you. I didn't pay him to say that, by the way. I just want to say that, right?
Yeah. Right. So, but you come to think, Adam has the caliber of guests that it's consistent, but it's also a very relational way that you've got the chat going, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like absolutely agree, 100%. And I also agree the whole kind of relational thing. I can completely relate to that myself, especially in the new kind of 2020, moving into 2021, because this is going to continue. Yeah. This trend is going to continue more than anything else. So
I would say to answer your question, get help, right? With the digital thing, get help. Go to people who there's three ways you can assess who you want to work with, right? This way, this has been helpful for me right through my whole career. Number one, they're qualified. So don't get advice for someone who doesn't have qualifications for a start off. Right? If you were talking to a lawyer, and I've been talking to lawyers, right? You want to talk to someone who's qualified. Secondly, they're qualified in the area of expertise that you need them to be qualified in, right? Secondly, they've had experience in that area, right? Yeah. And this is the most important one. You feel comfortable with them.
I agree. And do your due diligence more than anything else, because there's nothing more heartbreaking than having conversations, and you've probably had these conversations with people that really want to work with you, or vice versa, but the resources are exhausted because they've made some mistakes down the road.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there saying, for example, there's what I call a lot of fast track side door offers out there at the moment, right? Become a top speaker in, don't do a pedigree, don't do an apprenticeship. Just come in the side door and we'll put you in front of, stuff like that. Or, become a fast track author or blah, blah, blah. No, there's no substance to it. And that's the problem that people don't realize right now. That's what's getting amplified right at the moment with this digital thing, particularly on, the Zoom era,
Online courses, build an online course, build a sales funnel. I mean, it's kind of, it does kind of really get my back up because, at the end of the day, as human beings, and you probably will agree with me on this, is that we're always looking for instant gratification. But the reality is that there's no such thing as it. It takes time to learn skills like this.
No. And, one of the things that, every program I've done and like we were talking about Dan before, if we could give you a lobotomy and insert the information, we'd be selling lobotomies, right?
Exactly.
But it doesn't work like that. You've got to, it's like we promise you something. When I work with my executive clients, right, I promise them that you're going to be a lot better at leading your business, right? But what are they promising me in return? And I get that clearer. I'm going to do this for you, but what are you going to do for me? Because you've got to show up. You've got to do the work, right? You've got to be accessible. You've got to lean in and demonstrate you're using these tools. Because there's nothing worse than people buying lots of courses and they go, I started to do 2 lessons. Oh, another one's come along and another one and another one. They're just not putting the work in. So no, I hate to say it, we're coming back into an area of hard work. Do your apprenticeship, do your hard work. Earn your stripes.
I absolutely agree. And if you're one of those people that have like bought courses or invested in this and whatever it is, and you're just sitting on the sidelines and not actually taking action, you've got to think to yourself, go back to the reasons why you've enrolled on that course or whatever it is, because otherwise you're just going to become a sponge. And you know what sponges do? They just absorb and they don't do nothing.
Yeah. And then they become waterlogged.
And I love that. They become waterlogged. I love it. Very cool.
And they start smelling and you have to throw them out.
We don't want that. No, we definitely don't want that anyway. Yeah. So I know this year you wrote a book called Remote Working, and there were some co-authors in there which contributed towards the book and whatever it is. Now, obviously remote working has its, I suppose it has its upsides and it has its downsides, doesn't it, Andrew?
Yeah.
What do you think from a leadership perspective, and we're talking about leadership styles here, that we need to adopt in order to encourage and empower our teams so that we can become more of a productive and efficient business?
Yeah, well, again, great question. Really, really good question. Remote working has shown us that people want to work remotely. Right. So what's happening? We're going through a little bit of a gear change where do I get paid for attendance or do I get paid for performance? So performance-based employment is going to really, really come into its own, right? I don't care whether you start at 10 in the morning and finish at 2, just did you do what you agreed you would do in that time? So, and also too, working from home, particularly if you've got small children, you've got to juggle, how can I still be productive, but also juggle a family? So there's a lot of people who love the fact that they can be with their kids and things like that, right? The downside is that you miss that social interaction that we can do it on this, but there's nothing, you can't beat actually physically being in the same space with someone, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who are having withdrawal symptoms from that personal face-to-face culture, right? But as a team leader running remote teams, and I've got a client who runs 90 people remotely in not only different locations but different jurisdictions. So but they've done things like they've created a whole cultural way of doing stuff like huddles and special events and fun trainings and things like that. So you mentioned my daughter, but my daughter does things like in-house videos and they're really good relational pieces just for the team. I know I did the tiniest bee's whisker work with Emirates, and it's nothing to brag about. See how they operate, right? And one of the things that they were doing when I was, just peeking around the corner of Emirates, right, was they have amazing communication via video. They were doing this back in 2005, 2007. Unbelievably good communication with their cabin crew, for example, where huddles and groups and breakouts and stuff like that, they were doing that back then, right?
Wow.
So I think you've got to sort of look at, again, that relational thing comes into it. How do I want to be with my guys? How do I want to relate to them, right? And again, if you're being an idiot, that's what's going to show up on it's going to get amplified. This is a book I wrote very, very quickly. There was just 3 books I got to market really, really super quickly. One was Remote Working. One was Leadership for a Pandemic, which has sold a lot of books. But this one is this about me or you? And it's how to listen to someone who's upset. And right now, furloughs and being at home and not doing this and that, there's a lot of conflict circling around different employment places at the moment. So this book was just, how do you listen to someone who's upset? This is a book I wrote for my exec clients who are dealing with people with a lot of conflict all the time. And then you talked about the multi-author book. So Pivot and Grow, for example, is an example of a multi-author book, right? So these are, if you like, how many we've got? 21 experts who really understand how to pivot a business and grow a business. So the model here is I said, okay, write an article for me and we'll put it into one place. So that came out last month. And again, it's one of those books where you go, because it's changing, we'll do Pivot and Grow 2 because that's going to change in probably 6 months' time. So we'll do another copy of that. Yeah.
Very cool. Very good.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of towards
me shamelessly plugging books.
I will allow you. By the way, I just wanted to let you know.
Are you buying my book? Are you typing my book? I'm looking at you. Buy my book.
By the way, guys, I was going to say, yeah, we kind of like, we allow some of the speakers to what I call shamelessly plug themselves. We will allow that. But if there are any complaints, please direct them to andrewpriestley.com.
Andrew, send them to me. Buy the book and you can complain all you like.
Yeah, exactly. It's all good.
Something's crashed. Oh no. That's okay. Right.
So going back to the question around the whole kind of business plan thing, and this is actually just a real quick question because I'm conscious of time, does a business plan work? And do you recommend having a business plan in this day and age?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Don't do the business plan last, do the business plan first. But stress test the assumptions in the business first before you write the business plan, because a business plan is linear. Right, where I'm talking about VCs look at a business holistically, right, and they look for connections and relationships, and it's very hard to do that in a business plan. And a business plan really is to either raise finance, right, or you want to make changes in your business. But I would, and I'm going to emphasize this, probably the best business planning tool on the planet is the Prince's Trust. If you navigate to the Prince's Trust, Prince Charles deserves so many accolades for the contribution he's made to this country in terms of fostering young talent and entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
An amazing legacy that he's created there through the Prince's Trust. But he insisted that the business planning tool would be something that people could understand. And it was about a reading age of 12, nicely placed. So if you're in doubt, go into the business plan on the Prince's Trust, navigate to that, and just dip into it and read it over time and start getting a sense of how to put one together. But I would say, yes, have a business plan, right? But business plans need to be revised when circumstances change, and they need to be looked at.
Yeah.
Are we still on track to this? Right?
Interesting, because and it's interesting that you brought up the point was a business plan is needed when you need to raise finance. Absolutely, 100% agree, especially if you're going after an investor or a VC or whatever it might be. And then if there's a change in circumstances, I would agree with that as well. And interestingly enough, though, because you were talking about some interesting stats back at the beginning of the interview about how there's still a large percentage of businesses that still fail with the business plan. But why have you done any research as to why they really fail? Was it because of I don't know, lack of innovation or whatever it is? What have you found there?
I guess I wish I could say it's my research, but it's not. Firstly, you've got I think it's called the Houses of Parliament Business Statistics. If you're a business owner, go into the Houses of Parliament and look up business statistics report. They put it out every December, about December 16, right?
Sure.
And it tells us what's happening in the UK. So that's the first thing. So a lot of times you're coming up with a plan that doesn't fit the context of the UK. Now, I've given you a context. 70% of UK businesses have revenues less than 300,000, right? 20% have revenues 300,000 to 2 mil, right? But banks also give us really good research as well. And I think there's two things they say. Number one, the sense is they rushed it. So you think, I just got to impress somebody. I'll rush through this. So there's a lack of thinking in it, right? And I would say the number one thing where dragons den, when they fail on the dragons den, and when banks won't lend money, right? The banks have money to lend, trust me. But why they won't lend money is because the business case is not supported. And the business case is really the financial argument that makes sense. So you can say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Here's my revenue target, but you haven't demonstrated how you're going to achieve that in a realistic way. So they don't even stress test the business case.
And I love the fact that you used the word stress testing, because back in 2008, when they had the financial crisis with the banks and stuff, and they didn't do the stress testing,
No.
and then you're endorsing stress testing, even for like the tiny SME business as such, to the multinational clients, which is really fascinating. I think that's a really good point that you made there.
I look at it this way, mate. If you borrow, let's say you borrow 25,000, the average lend in the UK is about 37,000. The lowest lend is about 37,000, right?
Right.
Let's say you start a business and 12 months later that business fails.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did you get that loan? You probably secured it against your property.
Right.
Collateral. So you've added nearly 40 grand onto your mortgage, for example, right? And it's non-recoverable. So when the business fails, everything goes. But what doesn't go is the debt, unless you declare bankrupt, right?
Yep.
So, I know business, most entrepreneurs will raise about 80 grand. They'll go through about 80 grand. It's pollen, not COVID. They'll raise about 80 grand for that. If the business fails and you've got that on your credit rating, you've got that on your finance history,
sure.
right? So don't rush it. Go through, do stuff like, if it's important and do it, then go do the planning stuff. Go to the Princess Trust, look at the plan. And if you don't understand numbers, go and see an accountant. If you don't understand social media, go and talk to someone. If you don't understand Instagram, hire an Instagram expert. If you don't know how to build websites, go and get someone who does this really, really well. But you said a good thing. Do your due diligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And 100%. Listen, guys, I hope you're enjoying today's show, by the way. What is the book that you had with the stress testing? And remind the listeners again.
Yeah, it's called Starting.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's on Amazon?
That's on Amazon, yeah. And look, this is a book about strategy, right? So stress test the assumptions. Basically, it's stress test. Your business has, I'm talking to you now, right? Your business has assumptions. If you're running a business, there's a whole bunch of assumptions underneath it. What are they? And, this gives you a structure to look at key areas as an investor, stress test from those key areas, and other things will show up. My other book, Manage and Multiply Money, is just how to manage the money part, right? And look, I also did the Money Chimp, but
I remember that.
That's the bestseller one. This one was for millennials. So if you're a millennial, you want to manage your money, that's a good one. If you're a professional, don't buy both, because I repurposed a lot of this content for professionals, whereas this is really with millennials in mind. So don't buy both, because you'll go, oh, it's the same book. It is pretty much the same book.
Well, at least he's honest there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But listen,
buy both. You'll love
both.
Just because you're going to have to read it twice anyway.
And anyway, they'll do a bundle deal on Amazon, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's right.
So listen, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. There's so many great golden nuggets that you should have listened to. What I would endorse you to do, if you're in the gym or you're listening to this in your car, is to go back to this, get your notebooks and pens and paper handy, write down all of the things that Andrew has been teaching you and what we've been going through and stuff like that.
And listen to it with stakeholders. So if you've got a business partner or you've got your team or managers, listen to it as a team, and stop the recording and when you get an idea, and stop it and workshop it, really talk it through. Build some. This recording is a really good lunch and learn tool, so you can actually do it over a lunch and then just listen to it over a few days.
Absolutely.
It's more of a helicopter ride over a business I've tried to give you, right? Yeah. What's the context for business? And I've tried to include as much really valuable stuff that's relevant to people right now.
Yeah. Great synopsis. And just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Of course.
So good. So listen, guys, hope you've enjoyed today's show. Do me a favor, if you're listening to this on Apple, do me a favor and write, whether it be a 1-star or a 5-star review, please do me a favor and go onto there and just leave a quick review on there. It could be based around Andrew's show, for example, or it could be at any of our episodes or whatever it is, but we'll see you on the next Game Changers Experience show. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, you guys, I just want to say thank you so much for listening in to this episode of the Game Changers Experience. I hope that you got some amazing value, some great insights, and golden nuggets that you can implement into your business straight away. I would really, really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review on the button below. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.